Now, what we want to look at today is, in the world of human relations, in the world of engaging each other, what is real? How do we create a baseline? How do we create a framework that teaches us how to live together and work together, where there is diversity? So in Africa, or in the US, or in Asia, where we get these different cultures, how do we create a commonality? Unity and diversity. That's what the university is supposed to be about. Unity and diversity. Now, the framework that God gives us is around values. Okay, the capacity to live in unity is linked to values. That's the unity. The diversity is, how do we express those values? And this is such a simple concept, yet you will spend a good portion of the agony of your life working this out. Common values, unique expressions. One God, three expressions. Alright, so here we go. All of our choices are rooted in value. Okay? Now again, this isn't necessarily rocket science, but it's what we're going to do, particularly in this first part here, is just to explain the way we operate, how we operate, okay? Now, a lawyer, theologian said it this way: intrinsic value obligates. Okay? So, seeing a greater value creates a responsibility to choose it over something else of lesser value. Now, if you're like me, when you look at that and you go, what does that mean? I wish he'd say that in a language I could understand. So let me see if we can speak in a language that you will understand. Let's see if that will work. All right. 10 Swiss francs. 20 Swiss francs. Not rare, not fake. Just what they are, you can't have both. Which would you choose? 20. Difficult decision? Feel like you'll have to sit here and ask the Lord, just kind of seek wisdom on this thing? You need to have some group time, kind of work with each other, kind of work through it? Not at all. In fact, it's the easiest choice you could make today. Why? Why would you choose this over this? It's worth more. It has a greater value. Now, what we've got to see is the ability to choose, if it's not the same thing, is linked to it. Is this framework of value. Because as soon as you see this and this, and you know there's an option, it's like the choice is already made for you. It's really not even a choice. Okay? Now, is that awkward? Do you feel like, oh, I'm not sure I understand? It's just like, oh. No, right? I mean, it's like, duh. Okay, now let me make the choice more complicated, okay? So let me go, there it is, okay. I'll give you some extra time, 100 Swiss francs. Give you time to think about it. Give you time to kind of weigh out the decision. You can talk with each other if you like. Just kind of ponder it, because sometimes some of you are more deliberative in your decision-making styles. You need to kind of analyze this. So take some time. Now, as soon as you see it, is it an easier choice? Is there a greater obligation to choose this? Something in you says, okay, if it's a 10 and a 20, I'm twice as obligated. Greater obligation. Why? What we could call simply this, a first truth. The way that God made you, the way that one of the primary expressions of the image of God within you is the capacity, is the desire, and the obligation to choose something of greater value over something of lesser value. Now, would you want to do that every time? Can you think of a situation where you would be in where you would choose the lesser value over the greater value? Now, I know some of you are going, well, there might be a situation where I choose the 10 over the 100. But that's not choosing a lesser value over a greater value. You're just creating a situation where you would have a greater value impressed upon you rather than this choice. In other words, all of your choices are going to be rooted in this desire to choose something of greater value over something of lesser value. Okay? Someone might say, this is a fake. All right, now, let me see if I can get you engaged a little bit here. 100 RMB, China. 10.
10.
RMB.
You take the Chinese.
Yeah.
Oh, now we have a conflict.
Oh. And she said it so authoritative.
She did.
I always do that. It's to make people insecure. I can't remember now.
Now notice, again, don't get caught up in the exchange rate. Be aware of the dynamics that take place, because this is absolutely foundational to how we live. We could call it change management, we could call it building a team, we could call it communication, because all of our communication is woven through a value system, all of our thinking is woven through a value system. All of these are the different dynamics that go on. Now, what would happen? Okay.
Oh.
Or 5.
It's 20 times 10. It's like throwing away a quarter.
No, but that holds value for someone else. I could have used it.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, there's value attached to it still.
In my country, that's illegal. You couldn't do that.
What?
It's illegal in some countries, probably most. So we go back to and we're going, well, it's of lesser value, therefore it's justifiable.
But in the bank, there's a little bit of gold that supports that.
Well, see, we're appealing now to value systems. We're appealing to some framework that everything has value. How do we go to that? Some of your gifts want you to see it in certain ways and look at it. And this is the dynamic that takes place that takes our world out of skew. Meaning, whose value set do we go by that allows us to get along with each other, but be different? One of the most basic, fundamental questions anybody can ask, and we all wrestle with. Okay, so now we get to, let me give you another choice. Okay, now here on the picture here is a piece of meat, and the bottom one is stale potato chips. Okay, now if you're a vegetarian, just kind of bear with me. But I'm going to give you a choice. You can choose the meat or you can choose the stale potato chips. Now, before you actually choose, let me give you a little bit more information. Context, please. Okay, so the meats, I wasn't able to go to a store. So last night, while we were driving home, no, a horse is too big.
Sorry.
There was a cat on the road. Now, luckily, it was on a main road because there's a lot of traffic on a main road. So this little kitty was very tender. Cars had been tenderizing him all day long. Thump, 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 thump. So I had them stop the car. I jumped out of the car and I scraped Kitty off the road. And I got home and I got some gravel out of it, and I was able to take, just pull the guts out and kind of clean off the skin. And I got a nice little piece of kitty meat. Okay, so here's Kitty, and here's stale potato chips. Now that you have more information, which would you choose? You can fast, you can do a variety of different things. But the key to remember is, knowledge is power. Why? Because it gives you a framework of values. So if we go to this statement, choice equals values, we actually have to change it a little bit, okay? We've got to change it from choice to value to, now, choice equals perceived values. In other words, we are not God. We do not know everything. We cannot know everything. Our basis of making choices is always limited and finite. Therefore, it is at best perceived value. Now, this changes the game dramatically. Why? Because we don't truly know what anything's value is outside of an educated guess. Okay, so what is a human life worth? Now, I found this article in the International Herald Tribune in Singapore in 1985, and it was quite an interesting article. It says, people have been calculating the worth of their lives and the lives of others for as long as archaeologists, anthropologists, and historians can document human existence. In other words, we could say it this way. As long as we have any record of any person, anywhere, trying to make educated, wise decisions, they're struggling with one simple primary question. What is a human life worth? One of those basic. Now, we start to understand why that's such a fundamental question. Why? Because perceived value gives you a framework to know how to choose, react, walk with, relate to something. Okay, so if we go through this, we go, one way of figuring value is to break down the body into chemical elements. So 5 pounds of calcium, sulfur, 6 ounces of sodium, a little magnesium, and copper and iron thrown in. So Harry Monsine, an anatomy professor, human life is worth $8.37. Woohoo! The good news is up $1.09 in 6 years because of inflation. Now this is back in 1985. Big time. So how do you figure out what a human life is worth? Okay. Contract murder. So in the paper, Andres Santiago Hernandez, 22, recently told the Los Angeles Police Department that he was paid $5,000 to kill this woman. So a human life is worth $5,000. In some places, much less. Okay, Federal Aviation Administration says a human life is worth $650,000. Okay, you can go to Environmental Protection Agency, somewhere between $1 to $2 million. Occupational Safety and Health, somewhere between $2 and $5 million. Okay, now why is this important? Because companies often do a risk analysis. So an automobile company doing a risk analysis, and they've got a defect in a car, and they go, how much is it going to cost us to recall? And they figure out it's going to cost us $100 million. And then they do a risk analysis and they go, how many people are going to sue us? How many people are going to die? And how much is the litigation going to cost us? And they go, $50 million. Then they go, okay, we'll pay the litigation. You may not like it, but all of us have to find a way to frame decisions from a governmental, from a social, economic, business, family, arts, you know what I mean? Take your pick in the different domains. All of them are framed around the capacity to make decisions based or rooted in some perception of values. Now, I found this in the Wired magazine in 2003. The heart is worth $57,000. Hair is worth $5 an ounce, highly overrated. The eyeball, cornea is worth $4,000 each. A lung each side worth $58,000. A kidney is worth $45,000 plus. Total body is worth about $45 million. Now, this is big time discussion. So recently in Singapore, we had a big it's actually still going on. A well-known person in Singapore who has had a kidney problem. He's on dialysis. So he was caught trying to purchase a kidney from somebody in Indonesia. Now it's illegal in Singapore. Should someone be allowed to sell a body part? A kidney. I've got two. I don't need them both. I could play for my family. I don't have to sell my kids. How do I base an argument? Rooted in a value system that has an ongoing integrity from a judicial system, valuing the individual, honoring the family. And what you're going to find is there's dilemmas woven into this. Well, if I make this choice and I take away from this, or if I make this choice and I take away from this, how do we decide this? The tail end of that story was he spent a day in jail, and then someone who died in prison, one of the triads, ended up donating his kidney to him and gave it to him. And God worked out quite a unique way to get him a kidney in this process. But this is the challenge. So how do you know whether it's worth $8 plus some change or $45 million? How do we know what a kidney is worth? Someone in Indonesia, a village where you could pay the rest of their life and put food on the table for them by selling one kidney. Is that an option? Who says it's an option? How is it framed? How do we protect people? How do we protect stupidity? How do we honor decisions that have to be made? These are the dynamics that go into this, but if we don't recognize what we're dealing with at a foundational level, what we'll call a heart level, we're going to get confused. Now, as far as I can understand, when the Bible talks about the heart, what it's talking about is values. So it says things like this: where your treasure is, what? There will your heart be also. So it says, it doesn't say where your heart is, there will your treasure be. It says where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. So the framework, the essence of the heart is a values framework. Okay, as we go through this. Now, what determines something's value? Okay, so if we go through, these are kind of four common ones. They're not absolutes, but they're kind of a base one that we can all understand. So if something is unique, there's a limited quantity of it. What's going to happen? Value going to go up or down? Up. You walk into a shop, you see a whole wall full of the same shirt or blouse. What are you going to think? It better be cheap. Why? Because there's so many of them on the wall. So the more unique something is, the more we want to value it. Beauty. Now we say, well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, which is true to some degree. But nobody chooses ugliness for ugliness' sake. Now, when my son was, many years ago, the church was having a dance. And you know, in YWAM we have the boutiques, you know, where the leftover clothes are. So the kids used to love to go to the boutiques because it was like, you know, a store that you could discover all kinds of cool things in. So he was going to go to this boutique and to get some clothes for the dance. So he came out and he brought them home. He put them on and he had on these white polyester bell bottoms. You know, the bell bottoms flare at the leg. And then he had on a soft green long sleeve shirt that had ruffles here and ruffles here. And he kind of walks out. And he goes, "What do you think, Dad?" I said, "That is really ugly." And he gets this big grin on his face. He goes, "Yeah, isn't it cool?" Now, he's pulling from a way to be unique, different, to redefine himself. And this is part of this process. But everybody recognizes that whatever we call beauty has worth. And nobody goes, "That's ugly." You know, they may use it as a way of going, you know, it's like Michael Jackson, it's, I'm bad, I'm really bad. And it's just a cute way of saying, I'm the man, you know why, type of a thing. But we're dealing with a heart level of value, something has beauty. Okay, quality, how pure something is, and whether we need it or want it. Okay? So you do this consciously every day, you don't even think twice about it. You had a value system, you came to the school. You have a value system in how you relate to each other. You have a value system when you look at yourself in the mirror. You have a value system on how you relate to your family. You have a value system in all of these things, and most of those decisions are just in the unconscious area. We just decided, and this is the way we live. All right, now, how do we find what is the most unique, beautiful, best quality, and needed thing in the universe? I think that's a pretty important question. Now, the challenge is we're finite, and we saw how big the universe was. Okay, traveling speed of light, 6 trillion miles a year for 13.5 billion light years, we reach the edge of the known universe. There are, in that little dot of a speck of the universe, there are 10,000 galaxies with between 1 billion and 100 billion stars in each one. And how do you know where there is something of greater value? Wouldn't you hate to buy something and recognize you got ripped off? Don't you hate that feeling? You walk in, recently I walked in with, my son was in Singapore, so we went into a shop, we were looking at a camera, and we tried to do our research, or I tried to do the research, and we were looking at this thing, and the guy says, oh, this is a better camera, and we looked at this thing, and then we walked out of the shop, and we got home, and a part of me goes, I think I just got taken. Not bad, but I'm not sure that was the best deal. Now, how do you feel?
Furious.
Because somebody represented something and it wasn't true. And that is the horror of humanity. We can be misrepresented. We can be sold a line of goods and wake up one day and go, I gave my life to this, to him, to her, to it. They say there's two sad things in the world. When you reach a goal and when you don't reach a goal. Those are the two sad parts of living in the world. What do I mean by that? Meaning simply this. When you reach a goal, it's not nearly as exciting and valuable as you thought it was, and so you must find another goal because that doesn't really meet your needs like you thought it would. Or when you don't reach a goal, you still have the illusion that if you could get to this goal, you'd be happy and complete, so you keep living for this. Because we have this projected value system that we go to. If I could just drive this car, if I could just have this much money, if I could just be involved with helping kids, if I could just be involved with, well, take your pick, whatever the passionate point is, then I'd be happy. And the sad part is when we get to that place, we're not. Now, how do we deal with this? Let's turn to Job chapter 28. And let's read Job chapter 28. Now, Job chapter 28 has 3 parts. First part, wow, look at what man can do. Second part, oh no, we're in trouble. Third part, whew, there's at least an answer. Okay? So we'll read through it real quick and catch the essence of it, okay? Surely there is a mine for silver and a place where they refine gold. Iron is taken from the dust and copper is smelted from rock. Man puts an end to darkness, and to the farthest limit he searches out. The rock in gloom and deep shadow, he sinks a shaft far from habitation. Forgotten by the foot, they hang and swing to and fro far from men. The earth from it comes food, and underneath it is turned up as fire. Its rocks are the source of sapphires, and its dust contains gold. The path no bird of prey knows, nor has the falcon's eye caught sight of it. The proud beasts have not trodden it, nor has the fierce lion passed over it. He puts his hand on the flint. He overturns the mountains at the base. He hews out channels through the rocks. In his eye sees anything precious. He dams up the streams from flowing, and what is hidden he brings to the light. Now remember, this is written thousands of years ago. We could update it, and think of the world that we live in now. You can cut a man open, you can take a chainsaw to his sternum, you can break his sternum and pull it apart, you can take veins out of his leg, kind of re-sew these veins back in. We call it triple or quadruple bypass, patch him back up, sternum grows back together, and bingo, you got another 10, 15 years. We've got technology, a computer, the computer's here. 15 years ago would have fit in the size of this room. I have a picture in one of mine of a 1 gigabyte hard drive from about 15, 20 years ago. And the 1 gigabyte hard drive is the circle of my arms. And it's sitting on the floor, and it's about this big. And then there's another picture of a guy holding a 1 gigabyte card right next to it. like this, and you see what 20 years does, just as far as technology goes. All of the things going on around us. So the first part says, wow, humanity can find really valuable things. We must be all right. Then we get to the second part. Job, verse 12, he says this, 28:12, where can wisdom be found, and where is the place of understanding? And then he makes this statement, man does not know its value. Now, what happens if you don't know its value? We've already been talking about it. What happens if you don't know something's value? Yeah, but if you don't know its value, should you choose it? You have no context. You have no way of going, this would be a wise decision. You don't know how unique you don't. So he cuts right to the chase and he simply says this, but where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its value. Now about this place, we should begin weeping. This could bring us to tears. Because if we don't know its value, we don't know how to take care of it. We don't know how strongly we should desire it. We don't know if we should give our life for it or if we should pay $1.50 for it. We don't know whether it should be 4 years. We don't know who has wisdom. We don't know the source of this. So is it a government? Let a government tell us what to do. Parents, teachers, ministers. Somebody give me wisdom. And there's this ache within us to know, how do we choose what is valuable? And then he goes on, the rest to 22, and he just says, it is not found in the land of the living. The deep says it is not with me. The sea says it is not with me. Pure gold cannot be given in exchange for it, nor can silver be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, glass, etc., coral, crystal. Acquisition of wisdom is above that of pearls, topaz of Ethiopia. In other words, he mentions everything that he can think of that has value to them. And he says, is it worth the pearls? Is it worth the topaz? Is it worth the... And he goes through this list, and the last part is quite interesting. He says, abandon and death say, with our ears we have heard a report of it. What does that mean? If you've watched someone you love die, and you're there, so when my mom died of cancer, and you see them there on the bed, and their spirit is gone, and you see this shell, your value system is shaken to its core. Because you know, this is going to be your place. I'm going to be dead like that one day. And you go, now how do I want to live? That's a values question. A rumor of it speaks to us through those who are dying. It confronts us. Is having a better car worth everything you're giving for it? Is clothes, is education, is whatever it is it worth this? That's the wisdom question. Now we're in a place of despair, because now in humanity, who can give us the wisdom? Who can give us the wisdom to solve the things that kids are struggling with? Who can give us the wisdom to build social systems, family structures, governments, business enterprises, education that facilitates a place where the weakest link becomes needs met, validated, honored, and developed? Now, we go to the last part, verse 23 to 28, and it simply says this: God understands its way, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth, he sees everything under the heavens. When he imparted weight to the wind and meted out the waters by measure, when he set a limit for the rain and a course for the thunderbolt, then he saw it and declared it, he established it, and also searched it out. And then he says, and to man he says, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. Now we got to capture this. Where does God looks? Where does he look? For he looks to the ends of the earth and he sees everything under the heavens. How's he doing? Not bad? I'd say that's pretty good search results. He Googled the heavens. Value. Search. Spirit goes out, every rock, every planet, every star, every place. Little Google bots out everywhere searching all the, sources of value. Comes back. God, you're the most valuable thing in the universe. It's you. Okay, mankind. The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. Depart from evil, it's a place of understanding. Now, again, it's hard for me, I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to capture what God is saying in this. Mankind, humanity, all you little bitty people on a little bitty rock in a small little distant solar system in a very small little galaxy, let me give you some wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the place for all your values to begin from. If you will live that way, you will never be ashamed or embarrassed. And we go, yeah, but. Now, let's jump to the New Testament. Pearl of great price, Matthew 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid, and from joy over it he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls, and upon finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Now, Jesus gives us an insight into the kingdom of heaven. So, you're walking through a field, you're taking a shortcut home, you trip over something, you turn around and look down, and you've turned up a stick, and under that stick is an all-metal box. And you pull that box up, you pry it open, and inside it's full of gold and old gold coins and sapphires and rubies and there it is, right there. And you're about ready to scream in absolute ecstasy, and this thought comes flashing through your mind. Basic law of kind of free world property development. Simply this. He who owns the field, what? Owns everything in the field. Up and down. Take the box, put it in the ground. Kind of walk home slowly. Get into the house. John, I want to buy that field now. Nobody wants that field. It's a swamp. I want that field now. The guy doesn't want to sell it. Did you hear me? I don't care what it costs. Get me that field now. Now, what is that element? What would you call that? What's this word? Joy. And from joy, read that next part. What does he do? From joy,
He goes and sells all that he has and buys that field.
now, you get it? Great joy. Sells everything he has. Now, why would you have great joy in selling everything you have? Absolutely, it makes perfect sense. You know you'll get something of greater value. Now, this is the kingdom of God. Giving something of lesser value to getting something of greater value. You get this, you get Christianity. You miss this, you miss Christianity. It's that simple. Now he tells it the second time, in case you missed it the first time, kingdom like a merchant seeking fine pearls. You find one pearl, friend calls you up, he comes over, you go over to his house, he locks the door, he unlocks his drawer, he pulls out this pearl, he opens it up and says, Matt, look at this. Jaw drop, tongue rolls out, eyes, ah! I want it. I want it more than anything. I'll give you everything I have. That's what the kingdom of heaven is. Now I'm going to give you a test, okay? It's a simple test, but it's a pretty important test. If you fail the test, you fail the school. Okay, you get sent home immediately. Okay, but it's a pretty simple test, so don't get too nervous. Okay, here we go. The big circle is the value of God. Little circle, value of man. Okay? First question. Which is bigger? It's not a trick question. Value of God. Okay, we're all on the same page. Good. Second question. Which should you be more interested in? Now, before you answer, be very careful because it has huge implications for your life. Now, here's the only way I really know how to help you understand how deceived we are. What would you say of someone who chose this over this? What would you call them? Crazy, stupid. Biblical word is a fool. Okay, we use the saying, the light's on, but nobody's home. Now, we lock up people who cannot make this choice. They steal, murder. They're living by a different value system. Now, when we get to this value system right here, we go simply this. God has a greater value than you or I. Which should you choose? Which are you obligated to choose? Which must you choose? We go, let me think about this. It's a hard choice. And we will struggle with this to the day we die. Because we are easily distracted. Now, this is why I consider this the cornerstone, this reference point. It simply says this: He is worthy. Larry Crabb said this: I must surrender my fascination with myself to a more worthy preoccupation with the character and purposes of God. I am not the point; He is. I exist for Him; He does not exist for me. Okay? Now, if we just go through those points at the start, how unique is God? Know therefore today, and take it to your heart, that the Lord, He is God in heaven above and on the earth below. There is no other. How's that for unique? Yeah, I'd say that covers that one. Quality. How long lasting? Pure. Before the foundations were born, before the mountains were born, or thou dost give birth to the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. How's that? Not bad. Okay? Beautiful. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name. Bring an offering and come before Him. Worship the Lord in holy array. Most beautiful being in the universe. Okay, need versus wants. We'll do need first. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by Him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things have been created by Him and for Him, and He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. Do you need Him? He is holding your body together right now. I'd say that's a pretty big need. Now, do we want Him? That's the hard part. As the parables Jesus told said, we do not want this man to rule over us. We would be God. We would have no one to hold us accountable. See, in this aspect, God is not selfish. He's just humble. Some people say, well, God says to us, you can't be selfish. You can't serve yourself. And then He turns around and says, but you must serve me. Isn't that selfishness? And at first thought you might go, well, and then we think about it and we go, no, wait a second. God is the most humble being in the universe. He searches around and says, what's the most valuable thing in the universe? He says, my nature is. My nature holds the universe together. So He says things like this: my glory I will not give to another. Why? Because it's His. It's His stuff. His being is the most valuable being in the universe. And He simply says this: I am it. There is no other. Now the choice is yours. Now, let me go to the slides, and then we'll finish with this. I'll go to Revelation, just to wrap up. I think Revelations is simply this: the revelation of the worthiness of God. See, the bottom line is, God is worthy. You get that, you get Christianity. You put everything else in context. Those of you who need a context, here's the context. God is worthy. Worthy. And when we read through Revelations, you know, when the living creatures give glory and honor to Him who sits on the throne, to Him who lives forever and ever, and the 24 elders fall down before Him who sits on the throne, and will worship Him who lives forever, and will cast their crowns before the throne, saying, here we go, worthy art thou, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou didst create all things, and because of thy will they existed and were created. Revelations is a revelation that worthy is God. So in Revelations 5 it says this: worthy is the Lamb to open the book and to break its seals. A little bit later in 5 it says this: worthy art thou to take the book, to break its seals, for thou wast slain and did purchase for God with thy blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. Worthy is this Lamb that was slain. Somewhere, and here's just the seed of revelation. I don't know how to take it any farther than this. There has to be a seed planted in our hearts that simply says this: He is worthy of my life. Now, why can I go to any culture, anywhere in the world, and say this? You must give your life to God. I'm not talking about Western imperialization. I'm not talking about cultural imposition. I'm not talking about contextualization. Those are all different aspects. But all we're talking about Christianity is this: God is worthy of your life. You have ripped your life off from Him. You have stolen it. It is not yours. You are obligated to choose Him because He's the most valuable being in the universe. Everything other than that is thievery. Give Him back your life. That's Christianity. That's the gospel. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive the rewards of His suffering. You get that? You get the gospel. You missed that? You got religion. How much does it cost? How much does it cost? How much does it cost? How much does it cost to be in white? How much does it cost? How much does it cost? Wrong question. Who is worthy? How do I live my life for Him?